Coming up on this episode of We're No Damn Experts, get ready for round 2. August is all about art in Great Falls. We have 2 art experts on the podcast to talk about an upcoming show and event focused around famed Western artist Charlie Russell.
Best damn podcast, the best damn town. You want to get up, get ready to get down. With its big wide sky and the wild river Thames. If you want to go, we can take you there to Great Falls, Montana.
Welcome to the greatest damn town in Montana, Great Falls. I'm Rebecca Ingham.
And I'm Shannon Newth.
And we're no damn experts. Today, however, in the studio, we've brought in some experts.
We do have multiple experts.
Now, you listeners who have been with us for 89 episodes.
This will be 84, I think.
84 episodes. Know that Montana is known for its outdoor recreation and what differentiates... goodness my.
It's late in the day when we're recording this.
What differentiates Great Falls from the rest of the communities in the state of Montana is our art scene. And I don't think I have demonstrated clearly enough how ill-equipped I am to discuss art.
That's why these guys are here.
So we've brought in art experts and Great Falls experts.
Yes.
Now, we've had one of our guests on the podcast before, and we did a fantastic job with that podcast. It was so much fun. We did it at the C.M. Russell Museum. So if you're getting really aware of what's going on, you will remember Tom Figuarelli joined us on that podcast.
I still think we need sound effect, like clapping sound
clapping.
effects. Yes.
And Tom is the director of the museum, and with him, he has brought the art expert.
The art. Yes.
The man who knows everything about Charlie Russell, has been ingrained in every component of Charlie's life since he was born. Dwayne.
Wow,
quite
absolutely.
the setup.
Thank you very much. That bar is set so very high, but I'm very happy to be here. Thanks.
You know, it seems like it's set high, but it might not be set high enough for you. I'm just going to say.
Always got to keep reaching.
Ooh. No pressure, Dwayne.
There you go.
Pressure.
There you go.
And so my part of the job is now done because I'm a little bit familiar about what we're here to talk about today, but my inkling is just to start talking about ghosts, and that's not really the topic of this conversation, correct?
Well, do you have any stories about ghosts, either one of you? I guess we can touch on that if you want, but
no.
Okay.
Save that for another episode.
Yeah, we are talking about upcoming art fantastic events that are happening
I'll bite
in
on
August.
that. We do have a story about a ghost.
Oh, great. Take it away.
So we have a piece in the museum right now, Death of a Gambler, that has a phantom-like figure on the left-hand side of the piece. So when you're there, it's a Utica scene. It kind of looks like In Without Knocking, which is another Russell, that features Utica, Montana. So there's a lot of action going on there. There's a couple of gamblers that have taken some fatal shots, and then there may or may not be a phantom figure that Russell intentionally or unintentionally put on the left-hand side. So you got to go to the museum and see that ghost of a figure.
Do you ask people when they leave if they saw it?
Or
do people comment on it?
Some people do comment on it. I know it's pointed out in tours because it is a fun thing to see.
Yeah.
And it is a piece that was not publicly accessible for about 4 decades.
Oh, wow.
So it's really, I think, a catching piece in the museum, and it really creates some great dialogue because people can kind of come up with their own story on what was Russell thinking, what was his intent, was there an intent? I think there probably
was. This here when he painted it?
Yeah, what character is maybe the Phantom, right? Is it one
Right.
of these gamblers who's taken a fatal shot? So yeah, so there you go. There's a ghost story.
There's a ghost story. Okay.
And we cover a little bit of that in our last episode of Visit with Tom. But the coolest part of it is we were at the museum when we did the episode.
Oh.
And so we got to look at it. And then
As you were
that's
talking
right. We
about
did
it?
discuss that.
we ask people now, are they team ghost or not. So
Did I just create a rerun?
No, not at all.
I wasn't here for it, so I don't know
perfect.
what's going
It's all
on.
new content for Shannon.
There you go. It's a throwback episode.
It is, yeah. Well, and that
We
was
reference our old episodes all the time. We had Clark Thompson Carlson in from the First People's Buffalo Jump, and he confirmed a lot of the things I've said about the Buffalo Jump, which I had no idea were true or not.
She felt really reaffirmed. So she tells our guests these things when they come in and ask about the buffalo jump. I learned about this in our last podcast, but she felt very reaffirmed because Clark told her that the things she was telling her guests were mostly correct. So,
Well, we might find out that Dwayne's reaffirming a lot of the things I've been saying
Yeah,
about
there
the
you
Russell
go.
Museum. So
We're going to feel good about ourselves today.
that's the goal, is to reaffirm. Yes. So, yes, we are talking about Art Week options here coming up. But I first want to talk about, okay, so you're both with the C.M. Russell Museum. For those who maybe haven't listened to our prior episodes, Dwayne, who was C.M. Russell?
Oh, great question.
Oh my goodness, there is a loaded question. This is a 2-hour.
This is 2-hour biography.
3.5 episode.
Okay.
3.5 hour episode.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie Russell is our favorite artist down at the C.M. Russell Museum. Obviously, he was born in the 1860s in St. Louis to an affluent family, but Russell always wanted to come west. I have these romantic images of Charlie staring out the window as a grade schooler down in Great Falls, just wanting to do anything he could to move out west and be a real cowboy.
Get to be a cowboy.
And darn it, he
I do
did.
that today mostly.
Stare out the window.
Some days I walk in, see her, she's just staring out the window. Yeah.
Wish I could be a cowboy.
And
You
when
and Charlie have so much in common.
when finally Charlie's parents gave up and just gave him
Let him
that
go.
opportunity, let him get it out of his system, so to speak. So he came out to north central Montana and gave it a go, and really in many ways never went back. So he had a lot of natural abilities in all sorts of media, as a sculptor, as a painter in oils and watercolors. He was an amazing storyteller and just an all-around good guy, a guy that you'd want to sit around the campfire with. And his attractive personality is one of the things that we really celebrate down at the Russell Museum, that really draws folks closer to the man and thus closer to the artwork. It makes it all more real, and people get it. People get why we're still talking about him, almost, well, what? He was...
We don't have to do public math, Dwayne.
I
no
don't-
public math.
I
There
don't
we go.
do it. No,
100
I
plus
avoid
years?
it.
Leave
Yeah.
my shoes on.
well after his passing in
Yes.
1926,
Yeah.
we're still talking about him, celebrating him. Long story very, very short, the C.M. Russell Museum is right on the residential city block where his log cabin studio and home still stand today, and we're proud that those are a big part of our campus and our offerings. So. And I hesitated to insert it, but there have been stories about knockings on the walls or
In the home or in the museum?
Yeah, it was in the studio most recently is what I'm thinking. And, they were floating this photo around the staff, and I'm sorry, I just didn't see the most recent
It's okay.
claim of Russell,
Okay.
kind of overseeing what we're doing. But,
Well, maybe Charlie will come to you personally sometime when you're out there.
oh, he does on a daily basis. Russell, I really can't reiterate enough how, gosh, I just wish I could have met him. He was just the real deal, and I'm so proud to be a part of his legacy. And
So when they ask you the question, what person, living or dead, would you want to have a beer with? Your answer would clearly be Charlie Russell.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to, just because my big question is always, did a bar stool actually go through the painting? I mean, that's what I want to know. And he's probably going to be able to tell me. So, and he may not want to say it right away, but I think beer 4, he's going to go, that story about the bar stool. And if you want to know what we're referencing, you have to go back and listen to another
I was
episode.
going to say, I got to go back and listen to. I don't
Yeah.
know this Barstool story. Who would also be great to meet, in my opinion, would be Nancy Russell, because she was a big part of his success, or the reason that we know about him today, correct?
That's absolutely a very important part of the story. We wouldn't be talking about Charlie if Nancy weren't there to encourage him along every step of the way. And they were really a couple well ahead of their time. Charlie, of course, had all the natural talent a person could ever hope to have. But it was Nancy that helped direct that talent and guide his focus. You know, Charlie, he was an early riser. He'd go over to the studio and he'd paint, you know, after he rolled a cigarette, of course, but he'd paint all morning.
Roll your own.
And so Nancy she tried to keep all the neighborhood kids out of the studio, but one of my favorite things about the whole museum is there's the actual hole in the door of the studio where Charlie's latch string used to hang out of the door, and that meant visitors were welcome to come and visit him. And you can still see that hole in the studio door.
Oh, that's
and
pretty
Charlie
cool.
was so well known for saying the latch string is always out for you, my friend. So
That's
indicative of the kind of guy he was, for sure.
Now, the Russell doesn't have all of Charlie's works of art. My goodness, people, you're in for a doozy today. But it has some significant works of art, as well as what I tell people. Let's see if it's true or not.
Here we go,
That's
first
my
test.
favorite part. That it has a large collection of kind of his lesser known art, the art that he would give to friends and families, the artwork he would do on Christmas cards and that kind of thing, which you won't find in a lot of other museums. Am I right?
That is correct. I would say our
ding,
collection
ding,
is very personal, right?
That's a
Yeah.
good term.
Those are some of my favorite pieces, though, actually. Obviously, there are huge, gorgeous, well-known pieces, but some of my favorite things to look at in the museum are actually the letters that he wrote to friends, where he has the drawings on the envelope or on the top corner of those letters. That's artwork, part of his story right
They're
there.
great. And they allow us to have a sense of his friendships and his personality and the way he thought. We don't always get that with artists. I mean, maybe more so now because obviously we're a better connected world, but with many historic artists, we don't really maybe have that deep dive that Russell lends us through his illustrated notes. And that is a fun thing. And it's then personal, right? And our collection was founded off of the Trigg family, Josephine Trigg, and they were close friends with the Russells. And so her collection, which was really, as a result of that deep connection with Nancy and Charlie, is now something that we can share with the broader public, that we add to with new collections and works from other donors and lenders and through other exhibitions. So it's a personal thing. It really is.
That, and if I may add too, I mean, that is one of the type of work that we really put forward that other museums might not focus on as much as we do at the Russell Museum. Actually, later this fall, we have an exhibition specifically on a lot of those personal correspondence called Greetings with Charlie, that we're going to celebrate a lot of those illustrated letters. The works on paper in the collection are very, they're apt to get damage from the light. So we have to be very careful about how often we can have them out on display. So this is going to be a rare opportunity to see a lot of those personal letters and artifacts that are on paper.
So you heard it here first, folks. This fall, a new exhibit coming to the
It'll be
Sam Russell
fun.
Museum.
We'll start with Christmas greetings, seasonal
neat.
greetings,
Yeah.
which would be appropriate for the end of the year. But then after the Christmas season, we'll rotate those and then add some new illustrated works into the spring of 23. So, we encourage people to come back and see this exhibition as it evolves over the next, 6 to 12 months.
Oh, that'll be exciting. And I want to pull the curtain back just a little bit further. You don't always own all the artwork that's on display in the museum. Sometimes that's lended. Tell us a little bit more how that works and, how you rotate things out that might be in the museum that isn't on display.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I would say it happens through kind of like two general lines of effort. One would be if it's in a curated exhibition that we bring in. So, for instance, last summer we had an exhibition on Andy Warhol's Cowboys and Indians series, which was the last series that he did before he passed. So, those works were on loan from another institution. And so it was through that very specific show that we brought him here to Great Falls. That was great fun. And I would say that's probably the most conventional and common way that museums bring in works of art that are loaned. The other way is just individually. Maybe there's some families or some, single donors or supporters of the museum, that they're just gracious in wanting to share their art and their collection with the broader public. Because, I think, Dwayne can speak to this probably better than I, but, honestly, when we're working with people, whether they're buying from the auction, members of the museum, they're collecting contemporary Western work or historic stuff, they're passionate, right? Art really, at the end of the day, its value is just what it's made of if you really kind of boiled it down to its essence. But what makes it, valuable would be like the passion, the energy, the history, and the interest behind it. So it's those people that share that passion, that have it. They want to, I think, encourage others to gain that same appreciation of the artist, of the stories that are in the art, and the creative process. So it's kind of that motivation that brings, individual pieces to the museum. And that's sometimes where we're most excited, because then we can take, let's say, for instance, a Russell work, put it into our gallery and let it hang with the rest of our permanent collection, but it's just a new piece that creates excitement for the patron experience, and really then kind of puts new context on the rest of the collection too.
And
Dwayne said, well said.
So the only reason I know that, listeners, don't think that I've all of a sudden become an expert.
Art connoisseur over here. Mm-hmm.
I just spend a lot of time listening to smarter people. And it was interesting to me because I hope I get this name right.
Second test.
Exalted Ruler.
Nailed it.
Perfect.
Ding, ding, ding.
My goodness, people. So when we look at the Exalted Ruler, beautiful piece, but you actually raised the money. I'm telling Tom and Dwayne, you guys did it. Great job. The CM Russell Museum worked on a community-wide effort to raise the money to buy that. So the museum owns that piece of work, but they don't necessarily own all the art, which is part of the thing where I'm like, well, they just own it all.
Right.
Nope.
Not so much.
And then when it comes to the auction, which let's just jump into.
Sure.
The auction, you're not pulling pieces off the wall in the museum and going, well, let's sell this piece to pay the rent.
Right. Yeah. How does that? Yeah. But that feasibly could be to somebody who doesn't know what happens.
Yeah. All of a sudden you've got all this art that you're going to auction off. Where the heck
Yet the
does it
walls
come
are
from?
still full.
Yeah. That's weird.
Oh, I absolutely appreciate you bringing that up, because it is such a misconception that, it's just horrible. I just dispel that rumor every chance I can get.
Because people think you're just selling off the CM Russell Museum.
Go back into the vault and pull out a piece that somebody may have donated. Well, I can assure folks that is not the case. All the works that do come into the Russell either come directly from the artist that just created it within the last calendar year, or it comes from a second-party consignor that is putting their works into the sale on a consignment basis. So, yeah, thank you very much for bringing that up.
Because I had the distinct honor of, shortly after moving to Great Falls, getting to do the preview night at the Russell and seeing all the art that was going to be auctioned off. Because surprise, surprise, people, I don't get a ticket to the auction. They don't want me there. They don't want me taking up that space. I show up like in the background of like, hey, great job. Thanks for doing this for Great Falls. But I'm not
the encourager.
Yeah, not occupying a space, a valuable piece of real estate when we auction that stuff off.
Right.
But there are Russells that get sold at the auction. So how does that happen?
Absolutely. Well, we work all year long to gather the work that does go up for auction on the stage. And it really is a year-long process. We put out a call for submissions from to artists and consigners, folks that own historic pieces of work, for them to submit options for us to consider. And this is a cool thing about the sale itself. With a track record of 50 years of doing this now, it's a very competitive process to get a piece of art into the sale, and the quality of the work is just year after year. It's just mind blowing, and I never get tired of it, and it's just so wonderful to be a part of. So we work all year long. We put this call for submissions out in the fall of the year, and then essentially have a very competitive selection process where we whittle it down to the 200 or so pieces that does make it to the stage. So
That's still a lot. I didn't realize there were 200 that were
Yeah.
part of this auction. Wow.
yeah, it's
It goes so quick.
Yes.
It's like 2 hours long. And
Yeah. Boom.
that's a lie, people.
That try was not correct.
But more specific to your in response to your question, so the Russells, for instance, as I mentioned, they all come from private collections and individual owners that are selling the pieces. We of course at the museum would love to keep them all and have them for perpetuity for our audiences to appreciate all the time. But we kind of feel like this is maybe the second best option, because that's not a reality for us to buy them all.
Bid at your own auction.
Ooh, you could. Yeah.
So we appreciate the opportunity to do that. And, another great thing about the exhibition component of the Russell is the fact it really is a limited time opportunity to see 200 lots that you're never going to have the chance to see, especially as
It's a
a
private
whole.
showing, if you will, before they get sold.
A private showing of a very limited opportunity, because most probably those works are going into another private collection. And unless you're very good friends with all of these folks that are going to buy these pieces,
Life goal. Yeah.
you might.
I'm not getting invited over for coffee. That's not happening for me. So that's where I go to look.
I'm curious, as we're talking about this, and if we even know this number, do we know how many pieces exist in the world of Russell art? Does that include, and then would that number include his, would that include the letters that he wrote and paintings on that? Is that included in that? Do we have any concept of that?
Most scholars say about 4,000 pieces.
Okay.
And that would include his illustrated notes.
Okay.
And he was a pretty versatile artist, right? I mean, he did lots of different mediums. I mean, sculpture is maybe one of the things he's not really appreciated as much for, but was a tremendous sculptor. Obviously, I think most people think about his oils, but he was a great watercolorist. Sketch with a pencil. Yeah. So, I mean, he was a really versatile artist. And so that number really encapsulates all those mediums that he was experimenting and working with throughout his lifetime.
Okay. Yeah, that's not something I usually don't think about, the sculpting component or even the variety of paintings and sketches.
Well, and, on that question, we often then get the follow-up, well, are there new pieces being brought to the surface? And
that no one knew about before?
Yeah, that no one knew. And it's rare, right? I mean, maybe more common, and Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong, more common with illustrated notes that something might kind of hit to the surface. Because those are smaller. They're not necessarily, maybe as visible, probably not known to be in a collection of a museum, for instance. But, honestly, just this past year, we received a report from another museum that has a conservatory lab that was doing some research on a questionable Russell. And we thought maybe it could be. We had enough reason to have that piece go down to their lab and then have some work done with the oil on the canvas to determine if it fit the age of Russell's body of work, right? Wow. The ultimate answer said likely not, that it's probably not a Russell. But, it just gave us enough question. It was a piece that wasn't widely known about, and it did not come from a museum. So, but it did come from at least someone that we trusted. So we thought, well, there's reason enough to research it. So occasionally we need to research it and take a look at it. And that's kind of the fun things about maybe the Russell world, because you could find a gem that was previously unknown and unidentified.
Yeah.
Well, case in point, sorry to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
Case in point was a piece that we had in the Russell sale, boy, it's been 3 or 4 years ago now, actually surfaced through a show called Arizona. It was along the lines of Antiques Roadshow type show.
Wow.
That, my goodness, this family brought in an original Russell oil that nobody knew about. And
could you imagine
on that type of show?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
My grandma's had this thing in the attic and it's hideous. And we think it might be expensive.
Got dust all over it, and
Well, Charlie didn't do anything hideous by any means. So everybody, no, it's
that is true.
It's art subjective though, so I suppose
Yeah.
Some weirdo might think that. But,
As a sidebar, I will
Yes.
tell you, when we were cleaning out my husband's father's house,
you
there
found
was
a Russell and you're
No.
secretly a millionaire.
I found there was a violin, and there were people in the family
Oh.
are like, "Oh, it's a Stradivarius." I'm like, "There's no absolute possible way that this is a Stradivarius." I'm like, "But if you really want to hold on to it for another 100 years, it's still not going to
You
be
go
worth
for it.
anything."
Yeah.
It'll be worth double.
There you go. Yep. hmm
Well, it was so dried out and brittle anyway. I'm like, "No, this is nothing of
not
value.
happening.
You're not finding anything of value in this house."
Of the 4,000, sorry, I'm switching gears
Go-
again.
go for
Of
it.
the 4,000 roughly pieces, is it public knowledge or willing to share how many the C.M. Russell Museum has of his works of
Ooh.
art at any given
Hard-hitting
time?
questions from the former news anchor.
Boy,
Pulling
you know,
those out.
I should have that number right off the top of my head.
Well,
but
I didn't
I'll
even know
be
if that
honest
was
with
something
ya.
that you would be willing to share. I
You
didn't know
know,
if that was
we-
secretive.
We have about 1,300 separate pieces of fine art in the
Okay.
museum. And, you know, we're very proud of the Russells that we do have, which, you know, the Exalted Ruler is our crown jewel, and it's one of the more important Russells ever created. But then we have some really great smaller oils like
Yeah.
Fireboat. But the exact number, I'll have to get back to you on. That's a really good one.
Well,
you
and
know,
And that answer may come shorter than
yes.
sooner than you expect.
well, I
so-
might add that it all depends how you count it. Because
absolutely.
of course we have all the major works, the Exalted Ruler and the Fireboat. Oh my gosh, there must see stops on our docent tours down at the museum. But we also do have, you know, file cabinets of unframed drawings. You know, that's one of the great things about the museum is we pull those out for special exhibitions where other institutions probably wouldn't do
it's
that.
not the
but
same every single time.
it's not the same every time. And so the collections are just different. And of course, anybody, you know, everybody could use the fuzzy math to figure it out. I'll go back to the fact that other collections might have more masterworks in oil and things like that. But gosh, one of the things that we just promote is the fact that we're right there at ground zero. It's right where it all happened with the house and the studio.
You can't get more authentic than that.
You can't get more authentic with right on the block where, you know,
he lived.
I used to walk around the museum grounds and you can see the stamp in the concrete that says 1919 and you think, oh my gosh,
Harley
he
would have seen this.
he was on this same sidewalk. And
Yeah.
So
Well,
That's
and
incredible.
if you've not been to the C.M. Russell Museum, let's say in the last year, I'm going to go with that. It might have been 2 years. But the complex has expanded, and it is an absolutely stunning complex. Not like it was junk before, but the green space that is now open and the expansion of kind of the way the sculpture garden has worked is stunning. And it creates just a more impressive entrance when you go into the museum anymore. And I mean, folks, we did an entire episode on the wallpaper in Charlie's house. So, I mean, we could spend
Wow.
days talking
Okay.
about this if you really wanted to dig deep. But
well, and you know, one thing to note on what Dwayne was saying, I mean, you know, I think it's a great opportunity for people to see like a study that Russell had done that would be in our archives and be able to put that next to the final work and have that appreciation, that context for how he would prepare in his creative process. Or, you know, some of Nancy's letters where she's having correspondence with a potential buyer.
yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, those are really wonderful things, especially the correspondence that wouldn't necessarily get classified as works of fine art because they're certainly not, but they do add this dimension to Russell and to Nancy that other institutions wouldn't be able to lend that easily.
It's
So
that personal
something,
element where you
absolutely.
feel more of a connection to
where they're
what
a
it
couple,
was like.
you know,
Yeah.
that they're business partners.
partnerships.
You know, so that's a really fun thing. And, you know, I think that in turn allows us to talk about contemporary Western art so well because behind every great artist is a great partner, right? And I mean, there's scores, we talk about it at the office, there's scores of great contemporary Western artists who without their wife or their husband would still be great artists, but wouldn't necessarily be as established and as successful as they are. And that's what you have in Charlie and Nancy. And then we see it reflected in their lives, the lives of these other artists today. So that's a really fun thing. So you can see those connections and that kind of like family aspect to Western art that maybe in other genres is there too, but perhaps not as visible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always admired Nancy, well, from afar, from what I've seen, for her marketing prowess to get Charlie's work out there, and that they were such a team in establishing his legacy, their legacy, that we still know today. So props to Nancy.
Yes, she was.
Props to Nancy.
She was tenacious, and to
Yes.
give a quick plug to the museum store.
Yeah.
We have a book. It's really Nancy's memoirs that we published last
interesting.
year, and it just tells a great story about their life, and clearly you can get a sense of just not only her love for Charlie, but just her tenacity as a businesswoman. And so it's called Backtracking in Memory. We really encourage people to come by, take a look at it at the store, and take one
Gotta
home.
add that
But
to my list.
once again, it just gives a great backstory to Nancy. Our former curator had said that Nancy brought Charlie from the prairie art and made him a professional artist. And I think that is very true. But Nancy is someone who had kind of the deck stacked against her. She didn't have a deep formal education. She had a pretty rough childhood, but yet there she was, willing to make deals with the most established collectors in the United States at that time, and made her husband the highest paid artist of his time. So,
that's
that's a
incredible.
pretty amazing story.
Absolutely.
Let's keep talking about shopping, because it's one of my favorite things to do. 50 plus years ago was the first Russell auction. And today it is the foundation of what Western Art Week has become in our fine city. And folks, we've talked about Western Art Week. You can find our interview with Norma Ashby Smith, and she talks about the creation and the idea and all this idea behind an auction. Now, we had Western Art Week in March. The Russell auction wasn't a part of that. And now it is in August. And it's still the Russell auction, but there's more going on. So tell us what's happening. What's the deal?
The Russell Reignited. Yes, is that the name?
That's
Okay.
the name. That's the name. Yeah, we're very excited about it. So it's a different time of year than what we had for 51,
Yeah.
52 years. So a bit of stretch of time. Half a century there. But the pandemic shifted it, right? And so we're continuing to go with August. Why we're in August could be
takes
something
a
we
whole-
get to, but
It's a whole year of planning, so you
Yes.
can't just change this on a dime.
yeah, you can't. I mean, there's a lot of wheels of motion, a tremendous amount of logistics behind it. But frankly, there was always this kind of like soft echo in the background of don't have the auction in one of the coldest, most difficult part of the years to get to Montana. And now we hear why are you having the auction during the nicest part of the year when we want to be? So you can't you're gonna
win.
you're gonna lose for trying. But
People.
at the end of the day, nothing is showcased. No place is showcased better than Montana in August, right? So we're just proud that we can be this really important art event throughout the country and doing it at a time of year that's absolutely stunning in our state and here in Great Falls. So we're proud of that. This year is different. We are doing it in a different location, the Four Seasons Reno, the Pacific Steel Expo Park. And we're doing it in such a way that we can connect more artists. So previously we had a space that was wonderful for us, but it really only accommodated the auction itself. So, for those that haven't been there, I mean, you imagine a stage, you imagine seating, tables. So things that are just really common to an auction house. What was not there were these scores of artist booths and suites. We had some. But we're not able to get the large collection of all these artists who are a part of the sale. So this year, by virtue of going to the Montana Expo Park, we were able to bring together this great union of having an auction and this wonderfully produced sales event, but then over 100 separate suites where we can have artists really kind of curating their own space, displaying their work, and creating these like small pockets of engagement galleries for patrons to meet them, to build a relationship, to maybe gain a larger network of collectors. And at the end of the day, I think it just formulates this really fun fellowship opportunity, because that's really what Western art is. It's this place where people can meet each other, create really great friendships, have memories, tell some stories, and do this all kind of like in the spirit of Charlie. Charlie would have enjoyed this type of arrangement. He would have loved to have walked around with all these artists and seen their work, and then to do that, right next to a room where we're going to have a major Western art auction. So that's what people are going to see. It's something we haven't done really ever before. The Russell had been at the Heritage Inn for a number of years, and something that people had always kind of said that they missed was this great union between those artist rooms and the auction.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting back to that by virtue of this new arrangement and the Russell Reignited. So we're very excited. There'll be other events at the Montana Expo Park as well. That'll be featuring Western artists, Western furniture, Western fashion, Western music.
Other kinds of art are happening all through town as well.
Exactly.
So thanks
with
for
Art Festival. Yes.
hitting
Picking
that
that
up,
up.
because we've got more coming on the podcast of those kind of things that are happening that we're going to share. But the other thing that I wanted to note, and I'm excited about this, is the C.M. Russell Museum is not absent from Western Art Week. It's just the Russell auction reignited,
the premier
or
event, if you will.
that type of thing, which has been really synonymous with Western Art Week for a long time. And from a tourism standpoint, I spend a lot of time going, it's not just Russell.
Right.
There's 16 other shows going on. But, sometimes it's hard to change people's perceptions, and that's fine. But this gives us a new opportunity to refocus on Charlie, which may have been missed for a lot of people in the March episode. So March episode.
The podcast, yes.
Yeah, obviously what we're doing. The March event, where we're going to have more opportunity to engage with art in our community, which I think is going to be amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot happening, but obviously the Russell and Charlie lead this off. They're kind of the staple of what's happening. So it's Thursday, August 18th through Sunday, August 21st. Tell us about some of the other events that are happening with the museum.
Well, a fan favorite is Art in Action. So Art in Action is a quick draw, quick finish event, and that happens on Friday, August 19th at the Metal Art Country Club. That starts at 10 a.m., and people just have an opportunity to watch artists work and have some conversations with those artists. So a lot of it is seeing that creative process firsthand. A lot of it is just kind of maybe having a good word with some of those artists, going there with some friends and just observing. And then there'll be a live auction of that work at approximately 12:30, 1 o'clock in that time frame. And all those proceeds graciously go to the museum. So we're very grateful to all those artists that support that event. It has a direct impact on our bottom line and our efforts to exhibit and interpret more work.
Let me clarify that for someone who might be driving down the highway and just didn't realize what you said. The artists are getting no money from the sale of their artwork. It all goes to the Russell?
For Art in Action, correct. So the other sales
That's
events...
really impressive.
That is.
It is. It's a huge testament to how passionate and committed those artists are to
Absolutely.
the C.M. Russell Museum, for which we're incredibly grateful.
Right.
And grateful to the buyers that are there, too. I think, there's a few things that always motivate buyers, right? And this is kind of stepping into Wayne's world a little bit here. So I think, Art in Action brings out a couple new nuances. Like, for one, if they know that this has a direct impact to our operations at the museum, I think that can kind of motivate a couple more, bids here and there.
Sure.
I think the simple fact that, a buyer has seen that piece evolve over a few hours. They were kind of there in the creation,
Like
the
they're a part
origin
of the
story.
making.
Yeah. That can
would
motivate 'em.
motivate me. I mean, that's really neat to be there.
Yeah.
To see that process
It is,
happening.
'cause you can then
It's an experiential
It's
component.
like, you kind of share this moment with that piece of art. So when you have friends over at your house, you can be like, let me tell you
I saw
how
it
that
when it
started.
was created.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
in this day and age of the selfie too. Oh, and here's a photo
Here's
of me
it.
when
Yeah.
it was in progress.
yeah,
I
That's right.
picked this color.
Well, and I think too with the Art in Action, I would normally be intimidated to walk up to an artist while they're creating something. Be like, oh, excuse me. Can I talk to you? But that's encouraged. That's what this event is about.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you. The first time I ever went to that event, I had that exact same kind of like trepidation. But I think a lot of the artists, they kind of prep themselves, whether it be emotionally prepping themselves to be, for lack of a better term, kind of like tactfully interrupted.
Sure.
Or
Inundated with questions.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Or they prepare themselves by virtue of having that piece of art pretty
Mostly
much
done.
done, by the time they hit, the event. There are some artists, one I'll kind of point out or that sticks in my mind is Troy Collins. In years past, he's just shown up with a blank canvas. And
Wow.
so there's some pressure right there.
It's like a quick
But
draw kind of
he's delivered
situation.
and has created a wonderful piece
Wow.
from beginning to end.
Yeah.
But we always really encourage artists to do what they feel is comfortable, because at the end of the day, we want them to be proud of that piece. We want the person who is going to purchase that piece to feel like it's a very worthy piece of art. And we also really do want conversation. I mean, that's really the fun aspect of that event. So that's on Friday. Saturday, we have an educational symposium, and that's been a big part of our auction for the past number of years. Dr. Mark Sublett is a gallery owner out of New Mexico. He is an expert on Maynard Dixon, a historic Western artist who had a personal relationship with Charlie. And he'll be giving a lecture at 10 a.m. at the Expo Park, and that'll be in our artist suites area. And his lecture will be new material on Maynard Dixon and why Dixon, it was such a really fascinating character in the American West as well, and kind of worked certainly a different way than Charlie and focused his art in a different manner, but how there's just this real relevance and kind of connection between them as historic figures. So that should be great fun. We'll have the artist suites throughout then on Saturday, and Saturday night is our main live auction, which caps off 2 nights of auctions, both Friday night and Saturday night. So that's fun. Then Sunday, we do have some final hours of the artist suites. So if people had their eye on a piece of art for the past few days, they'd have one last opportunity
If it's
to go
still
there.
available.
If it's still available, yep.
Don't wait till
you
the last
don't wanna
minute.
You
No.
don't want to wait. So
So for those, Rebecca was saying earlier, the auction itself, it's more of a reserved crowd. So maybe
Ticketed
let's
event.
yeah.
Let's
so
say it that
yes.
way.
So let's talk about who can go to what for these events. Which ones are open to the public? Which ones you need tickets for? Things like that.
sure, Dwayne, maybe I'll take. You want to take this one?
No, that clearly was you.
So.
Nope.
So the artist suites are open to the public.
Okay.
Anybody can come to the Montana Expo Park between the 18th and the 21st and see the artists, see their work, and buy a piece of art, right? People can come to the museum, and it will be free and open to the public that week as well. So they can see our permanent collection. They can see Russell's home and studio. They can also see then the works that will be auctioned on the Friday and Saturday night
wow.
sales.
Okay.
Now, what requires a ticket are as follows. Number one, there's a ticket to go to the preview party on Thursday night,
Okay.
the 18th. There's a ticket required to go to the Russell Western Heritage Award that honors Dr. Mark Sublett, also on Thursday, August 18th. There's a ticket required to go to Art in Action on Friday the 19th. Tickets then required for the Friday night and Saturday night auction. And all those tickets are available at the museum or by calling 727-8787.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Good deal. No, thank you, because there's a lot of events happening, so that gives people an idea of what they need to prepare ahead of time for and ones they can walk right up to.
So I've got the hard-hitting question
Oh, boy.
because I'm learning from Shannon.
Oh, dear.
Are there a set number of tickets available for the Russell, and are they still available? Are there tickets? Let me rephrase that question so it made sense.
Is this what I've been teaching you?
Clearly not. You would have done this better. Are there tickets still available for the Russell Reignited auction?
There are, though we do anticipate them going very quickly. We've just seen a number of them start to kind of pick up in the pace of sales. We have VIP tables, for instance. As of right now, we have 1 VIP table available. We anticipate that being purchased.
Gone soon.
But there's not a bad seat in the house. And so we do have tickets available, but we really encourage people to call and purchase their tickets immediately. We
Right.
anticipate very strong sales.
And book your rooms. I'm going to say it because that's what we do here at Tourism.
Yeah, plug for us, too.
It's likely to be fairly busy.
Yes.
With all this fun new things happening and the artists that are going to be here. And this is the first time anything like this has happened. And so get your rooms, people.
Yes, and we do hear from people that they're just asking us, are there still rooms available in Great Falls? There are, but they, like our tickets, will be going fast.
Absolutely.
So people should, make arrangements. And we're, here's another thing we're encouraging people. We're encouraging people to drive up, if they can. If you're coming from a long ways away and you need to fly, by all means fly.
Yes.
We have a great airport. But the unpredictability of flights in other parts of this country are as such that if you want to be guaranteed to come here and if you can drive, we're really encouraging people to drive.
Beautiful trip up here.
Make it a 2.5 week vacation because there is plenty to fill your itinerary.
There's a lot happening then.
And we can help you fill your itinerary outside.
Absolutely.
Of just the Russell auction activities. So
well, and on the note of Russell auction activities, let me just give you some more specific information for tickets, if you don't mind. So
please.
The russellsale.org, the russellsale.org, or the direct ticket line is 406-727-1939.
Okay.
Ooh.
Great.
Does 1939 have any significance to a special year? Please tell me it does. And if not, lie to me.
Well, Charlie had already passed, unfortunately. So,
but Nancy and Jack are still roaming around countryside in 1939.
Yeah,
was a
Nancy's
great
not
time.
doing real well by 39. Her health is failing. So,
Okay, folks,
So,
you're about to
no.
hear. I'm going to come up with a story. We're going to sell it like nobody's business, and
we
people will
really
never
should
know.
have a good story about
Okay.
that, though.
Have fun with that. Yep. Good
Yeah.
luck.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you. Nobody has faith in me.
I have faith. Just
You
that
say
didn't
things
go
with
so well.
strong enough conviction, people are going to believe you
That's what she does to visitors.
all the time.
You've done pretty well.
So in the past, the Russell has coordinated a runway fashion show. No runway fashion show for August.
No runway fashion show for August.
I got to MC that once.
Which you did a wonderful job.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that
that was a new venture for me. I
Yeah.
appreciate art, but I don't know much about art. So
well,
that was
a fun event. We do, by no means have we thought that was the last of the Russell Runway show. So I think there is a future for it. Given all the new parts and pieces this year, we thought we'd
Right.
probably have enough new. But there is Western fashion that will be at the Expo Center, specifically in the Trades and Industries building
another way
during our
for
sale.
people to appreciate art or a
Absolutely.
different land or palette, if you will, for that art.
Absolutely.
And
No,
then- Go ahead.
I was just going to say, our patrons, right, kind of like allow their Western fashion inspirations to show. And so it's been just a really natural part of what we've been trying to do. And so I think there's a future with it. And in the interim, until we have it back, many of those people that come to our events will be showing everyone else what
It
Western
will be
fashion
their
looks
own
like.
fashion show.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So are cowboy boots required?
They're encouraged.
Encouraged, okay.
Yeah, they're encouraged.
Oh.
Do you have some?
Do I have some? I forget you're new to this. I have over 300 shoes in my closet, and a good
Boots
portion of them
specifically?
are cowboy. Oh, at least 10 different pairs of cowboy boots.
Wow. There you go.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Stunned. Silence. Stunned silence.
Well, Dwayne's just doing a quick count of his own shoes.
Yeah. He's like, wait, how many boots do I have? Yeah.
I have
That's
one.
impressive.
Yeah.
Well, I
Little
don't
did
know
you
if
know.
impressive is the right word.
I've got one question before we move to wrapping up.
I have another question too.
Oh, okay.
You go ahead.
The kids essay contest still happening in March.
It is still happening in March.
Good deal. That's a topic for another time, and you guys can listen to our Western Art Week show if you want to know more about it. But that was really just for my own personal knowledge.
Yeah, no, that's a fun event. We'll talk more about it later. It doesn't apply here. I wanted to ask because people who appreciate art, or maybe they like to go to museums, they hear Western artist or cowboy artist, maybe like, that's not my normal style. Why should people come and appreciate Charlie's work? Why should people who maybe normally wouldn't want to say, oh, Western art, that's my interest? Why should those people come and check out the Russell Reignited and all the events?
Well, as far as why should people come and see Charlie's work,
Yeah.
it's so much more than what you see on the two-dimensional surface. It's the man, it's the humor, it's the history, the culture that talks about Montana, this region, what it's been like for from Charlie's time and well before. But Charlie was an incredible artist. There's nothing, no questioning that. A lot of artists come for inspiration, to really pick apart his techniques. So it's really, that's kind of fun to see, if I may take a little side route there, that people do come and really inspect his pieces to find out how he created that sagebrush with just a few simple strokes in the foreground. So he really was a master of multiple media. As far as the Russell sale and the offerings therein, I can't stress enough that that's just such a unique exhibition year after year, because not only are you not going to be able to see those same pieces probably ever again in your lifetime, but it's a wonderful survey of the different interpretations of what Western art means. And that's what keeps it brand new every single year. Sure, you might not like the Cowboys in this one, but wow, the next one right door is incredibly impressionistic and with, thick paint all over the place. And it was looks like it was done just at the spur of a moment. So, I mean, there's just literally something for everyone. And I encourage people, even if they, aren't so sure that Western art is their thing, there's probably something in there that's going to inspire you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, Western art, I think, is just a very broad genre.
Oh my God, it's just huge.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, it's just not one thing, which is why I think it's so fascinating, right? I mean, it can be landscape, it can be wildlife, it can be indigenous, it can be, cowboy. But at the end of the day, I think it's our art, right? As Westerners, it's our art because it tells our story, whether it be a story of, the range changing that Russell captured, or if it's the story of the West today that a lot of, contemporary Western artists are trying to, interpret and figure out and, take a really hard look at. So, I mean, I think by looking at Western art, we're kind of looking at ourselves and trying to figure out our own journey as Westerners. And that's, I think, a really just cool aspect about this event. Just like Dwayne mentioned, I mean, what a great connection between Western historic art and contemporary Western work that, I mean, people can kind of see the wide spectrum of work, but then also see a wide spectrum of artists, people that are well-established who have been doing work for, in some cases, 30 or 40 years, and other artists who are brand new on the scene that are starting to really make a name for themselves. And they're not all from the American West either. So, I mean, it's a really fun connection of great art, great artists, and I guarantee people will have fun.
Fantastic.
Can we say anything more? No, we cannot. No. It's been a wonderful time having.
Well, I was like, well, we could, I guess. Are you opening that door?
No, I'm closing it and shutting it. Thank you so much, Tom and Dwayne, for your time and passion for this, because I think a lot of people think it's just a job, but it's not. It is something that enters your soul and stays there. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk again with people who are smarter than I am about this kind of stuff and share their passion with us. So thank you so much. And listeners, you've made us Montana's #1 podcast. We couldn't be happier about that. So thank you. And until we're planning your trip here to Great Falls, we hope you are having a wonderful time wherever you are, creating memories with your friends and family. So we'll see you soon here in Great Falls. Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're No Damn Experts is the recorded claims from Great Falls, Montana, covering what you need to know about this amazing damn town.